Welcome to the SNN.Network Canada virtual event. I'd like to introduce our next presenter, Guy Chamberlain, CEO of Tetra Bio-Pharma. Guy, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello everyone. I'll present to you Tetra Bio-Pharma today. Obviously, Tetra is a public biotech company, so this is our forward-looking statement. Honestly, it's very typical of any other public company, so I'll proceed to the next slide. So the investment highlights, basically why invest in Tetra, just for everybody that's on, I guess, listening on the call right now. We have made a public offering based on our base shelf prospectus, so this is a good time, obviously, to assess Tetra and to invest. In terms of the investment highlights, I think it's really key to understand who Tetra is. So Tetra has a highly experienced senior management and actually middle management. And by that, what I mean highly experienced, I mean in terms of drug development and moving a drug, investigational new drugs through the various stages of drug development and achieving the key milestones associated with that. Every employee actually at Tetra is incentivized by a performance share unit program, and I think that's key because everybody has to drive to achieve the major milestones that really transform a company like Tetra. This isn't the case in many, actually, biotech companies. Tetra, the team, like I said, highly experienced, but also very experienced on the side of regulatory world, which means the Food and Drug Administration, Health Canada, the European Medicines Agency, and obviously dealing with controlled substances agencies like the Drug Enforcement Agency and Health Canada's Controlled Substance Division and the Cannabis Directorates. And that's key because the Schedule I substance doesn't move like a regular drug. Many, how could I say, not hurdles, but many licensing type of steps to take care of. We're highly successful taking drugs from discovery to FDA authorized trials. I think you'll realize that when we get to the pipeline slide very shortly. And that really shows to our strength as an experienced team. Many of you who have invested in other biotech companies or even drug companies know very well that the performance of getting a new drug, say from discovery into humans, into a first human clinical trial can be anywhere from 1 out of 1,000. And once you're in the clinic, only 1 out of 5 basically makes it to the market. Tetra has been highly successful. As you'll see, we ran multiple drug candidates in 2019. We had nothing in the clinic, so we were developing multiple candidates, hoping to bring one to the clinical stage, basically with FDA authorized trials. So you'll discover by the pipeline that we actually brought every single one ready to go into the clinic, and you'll see why we're not moving on all of them at the same time. Obviously, as a small company, we cannot. We have strong intellectual property, and by that I mean granted U.S., granted European patents. So they're not pending, they're actually issued. And also we do have some that are pending that are at a PCT stage as well. We also have 5 orphan drug designations from the U.S. FDA, and we recently obtained our first orphan drug indication from the European Medicines Agency. The one from the European Agency is actually an important one to highlight, mainly because if you look at the entire, say, controversy about bringing medical cannabis to the European market, and you're seeing that the European Commission just granted Tetra an orphan drug status for its botanical drug QIXLEEF, which is basically the flower bud of cannabis developed as a prescription drug, you're showing the openness of the European agency basically to accept our drugs going forward with no controversy. And that for us is a very strong signal. And we recently also announced positive news from the European agency in terms of validating our drug development program. We're in a unique competitive position within the cannabis market. Basically, we do not operate in the recreational or medical cannabis stages. We're basically into the prescription drugs. So we're basically very similar to what GW Pharma was doing. And if we all remember, GW Pharma was acquired by Jazz Pharmaceutical for $7.2 billion, which is basically taking these cannabis and cannabinoids down a well-proven pathway, which is the prescription drug pathway, and all the way to the market. So like we said, multiple avenues to drive a strong long-term growth for our shareholders. Tetra as a company is basically a virtual company, and I won't spend much time on that. Tetra basically has all the skills inside to design the science that we need, obviously file the patent, obtain the proof of concept data that we need, develop the intellectual property, and obviously do the science to run our toxicology, negotiate with the regulators, design our clinical trials. It's all our science, and then work with clinical research organizations to execute these. Obviously, we have an obligation under the Food and Drug Act, even the Canadian Food and Drug Act, and that is basically to ensure compliance of our vendors to the 3 regulations that deal with, say, the preclinical toxicology, the GLP, manufacturing, the GMP, and GCP for all clinical trials. And this is all done with our in-house capabilities and also our regulatory and licensing. Regulatory being the classic submissions of clinical trial applications and marketing applications, and licensing having to deal with basically the licenses required to move a Schedule I substance on the market. About myself, very rapidly, I've been developing new drugs since 1995. I've never worked on a simple synthetic drug, always worked on very complex molecules, was one of the pioneers in the world of drug-device combination products, so you'll kind of see why a person like myself is involved with products like COMS and QIXLEEF. Dr. Kelly has over 30 years of experience in research and development of cannabinoid drugs. She worked on multiple contracts as a professor for big pharmaceutical companies in the cannabinoid space, so a very well-established pharmacologist in the space, has over 120 peer-reviewed manuscripts. Steve Neron, our chief commercial officer, comes from big pharmaceutical companies like Merck and Pfizer. Basically joined the company to set up the commercial launch of our REDUVO drug as soon as we get the drug approval, which we'll discuss a bit later in the slide. One thing that I think is we're very fortunate, our board is actually very complementary to our to the executives. Obviously, as you saw, our executives are very operational oriented, so very strong in executing. Our board is a board that really complements from a business and a finance point of view. Dr. Brent Norton joined the board, has over 25 years experience in the life science industry, including being a CEO in some healthcare companies, and obviously an investor. Brings a lot of guidance at that level, especially on the financing side. Catherine Old is the chairman of our audit committee. She has over 20 years of experience in basically as a CFO role and helping work with our financial team to ensure we run a very lean operation, which I'll share with you very shortly. John Kim is an award-winning portfolio manager. He comes with obviously more than 20 years experience in managing mutual funds and various other client assets in that space. And one of the things obviously that's really important, John brings the market cap orientation that's really important at the stage of Tetra where we're at. We're really at our turning point, going from a biotech to a biopharma company. Dale Well joined the company. She has over 40 years experience in the business side of healthcare. And obviously, like I said, when we're at this turning point to become basically a revenue-driven company, she'll bring this type of vision to us, which is really important. Now, our key drug that I'll be talking to you about, being QIXLEEF, is covered really by this slide, in the sense that QIXLEEF is going to address the opioid misuse. And, you know, a lot of people don't maybe think that opioids fall into an unmet medical need, but when you think of the controversy, the overdosing, the addiction, it is an unmet medical need to find a way to reduce this misuse in basically the practice of pain relief. The NIH identified that what was required was really safe, effective, and non-addictive therapies to replace this. And we believe our drug, our QIXLEEF, and this is based on our, so far, our clinical data that we have in humans, that Tetra's drug certainly is a lot safer than an oral administered cannabinoid. We don't have the liver toxicity. And we also have a very rapid onset of action, which is really important when we'll talk about addressing the breakthrough pain. Highly delivered to the CNS, another important fact I'll raise a bit later. Relatively low impact on cognitive function, so safety if you want to have an alternative or some way of at least reducing the opioid use, you have to have a better impact as well on cognitive function, which we do. Obviously, the FDA had a favorable outcome for our second and third line therapies, basically because of the safety profile. The FDA agreed that we would be able to move to closer to the first line therapy with our drug. Breakthrough pain is an unmet clinical need, as stated. The market size for these drugs, these are the immediate release and short-acting opioids. You're looking at about a $16 billion market. So we certainly have a place to, like I say, make some very good revenues in this space. So this is our pipeline slide, and I think here I really have quite a few key messages for any potential investors. One, obviously the solid ones, the QIXLEEF, the REDUVO capsules are our two primary targets that we're moving. And by that I mean they're the only ones that are moving. And that's important for two reasons. We identified as a company and as a board, we identified that these were the two assets that would really change the value of Tetra and really transform us into a biopharmaceutical company. All the other ones, comms is basically frozen. We have a bridge to QIXLEEF. FDA's cleared it. We could start clinical trials. REDUVO Adversa, same thing. 2 meetings with the FDA on that one. ARDS 003, PP03, same thing. They're all at the stage that we could trigger them into a clinical trial. But what's key as a small cap company at this stage is really to keep our focus, deliver on what we promised to the market for QIXLEEF and REDUVO, and then obviously we'll be in a much better position to move them. That said, we're still waiting for the verdicts from the federal government and a provincial government for funding of the clinical trials of ARDS 003. Obviously, would we get some funding from the government, this would change our position, obviously, on moving the ARDS 003. Why is inhaled drug an asset? And this I think you really need rapidly to understand. Inhalation delivers very rapidly to the brain and very high levels, and that's really important. And we're bypassing the liver. We were able to show to regulators in a human clinical study the metabolism of our cannabinoids in humans, that we had a very safe profile of metabolites compared to oral. And that's really key, especially if you're going to deal with a patient population like we're talking about, which is the patients in the reborn study that we have. So that was really instrumental, demonstrating the safety in humans of our drug and being able to move forward. Now what you're going to see is a really important slide. What's on the left, look at the orange figure. That orange figure really shows the reality of pain. So there's two types of pain in cancer patients, for example. There's the background pain. In the case of the background pain, is the everyday pain that patients will suffer. Here in Canada, there's probably over 8 million patients today that have chronic pain that suffer from it on a daily basis. You live with pain, you learn to live with that, because your medications, even though you're getting a combination of analgesics, you never actually eliminate the pain for the patient. So it's really key that we need additional solutions for that. One other thing that's really important to understand there is, I call it actually breakout pain. The breakout pain is basically, to me, is kind of, you get this sharp increase in your pain, and it really rises rapidly. You can get it once, an episode once, twice, 3 times, up to 10 times a day even. And what's key is really having something that can really help that. And if you look at the immediate oral opioids, it takes them really anywhere from 30 minutes to basic, from basically it goes rapidly up and comes back down, but the immediate release opioids will take at least 30 minutes before they begin to give pain relief with their peak at 1 hour. So if you look on the right side, the orange, so you're seeing the green curve, which is QIXLEEF. It actually mimics the breakthrough pain. So you're seeing the rapid rise in QIXLEEF and obviously mimicking. So obviously this is based on our pharmacodynamic data in humans and pharmacokinetics. Let's look at the bottom ones, and actually I'll switch slides to show it to you even closer. A few really critical points on this slide. If you look on the left in the red, so one of the reasons patients get into trouble, for example, with the immediate release opioids, is it takes a long time for it to be eliminated from your body. think it takes about 7 half-lives to really clear completely a drug like this. But that's not the reality of the patient population. They'll get a minimum of 1 to up even to 10 episodes per day. So a patient is going to take more than one oral immediate release opioid per day, but there's still some drug left. So if you take one again at 6 hours, you're going to have what we call an accumulation over time of the drug. And that's really bad from a safety point of view. The more you accumulate, the more probability you'll get some severe, serious adverse events happening in patients. In the case of QIXLEEF, it's the opposite. We never accumulate. We were never able to achieve a steady state where you'll detect part of the drug in the blood after, in between the use of it. And that's really key because you do not want to accumulate. And over time, obviously, what you're seeing is basically 4 to 6 hours still of relief in the patient, and that's key to the tackling this type of pain that we're looking at. So rapidly, like I said, I won't go over this in much detail, but the opioid drug side effects, most of you know, include respiratory death from respiratory depression, cardiovascular, cognitive function, but obviously higher incidence of these associated with accumulating the drug, which is an unfortunate reality. If you look at the side effects of QIXLEEF, pretty clean compared to that. Actually, I pointed out the throat irritation. That's due to actually to the hot vapor of the vaporizer. If you just take sips of water in between inhalations, you kind of basically reduce this side effect. What we put here, and I deliberately put the euphoric mood there because it's not really a side effect. It's part of its primary pharmacodynamic effect, and that's what we want. You get that in all the patients. And what it does is it basically tells your brain that the pain signal you're receiving doesn't bother you anymore. So it's changing your threshold to pain, and that's critical in the fight against opioids because if I change your threshold, you're going to need less opioids to reduce your pain, and I'll be able to reduce your pain by a lot more. So this is why we strongly believe that QIXLEEF is going to have a great place in the battle of reducing the amount of opioids to patients. So a bit more about our safety, just to let you know, in all the trials we've conducted, we've never seen a serious adverse event in our patient population, and it's really, really pretty clean from that point of view. I'll skip to the trial itself. So the Reborn trial is one of the first in the world of inhaled cannabinoid going basically, you could say, in a comparison against immediate release opioid. It's a crossover design, so every subject will get both drugs. If you start in Group A, you'll get our QIXLEEF product, followed by a 1-week washout, then the immediate release opioid, and you started on the opioid, obviously the opposite. Primary endpoint is at 30 minutes post-intake to see what the pain relief is, and we also measure it at 5, 10, 15, 30, and 60 minutes. And this is a key study because from this study, we're really going to be able to see and show physicians how a product like QIXLEEF can be used to manage these immediate severe pains. The Plenitude trial is also an interesting trial. There you're looking more at the background pain, so the regular daily severe pain that you get from cancer. In this trial has 2 primary outcomes, obviously pain relief and quality of life. And this trial is also going to bring supportive data, obviously from a pain relief point of view to the regulators, but also be able to provide us with the long-term safety data. In terms of our development path, obviously next year is the key year. We'll be working on the toxicology to be in a position to submit the marketing application for Reborn. We also need to manufacture 3 commercial lots to be able to submit to the FDA and to Health Canada a marketing application because it takes at least 1 year of stability data on 3 lots. Our Plenitude 1 trial will continue because it's bringing us the long-term safety data. And obviously Plenitude 2 won't move very fast because in actual fact, there'll be a secondary indication to be, say, approved after the first one. The Reborn 1 obviously will get to the results of the study in the Q1 of next year, which will be a significant milestone for the company. And the Reborn 2 trial, we should be in a position then to start this trial. The REDUVO, which should be a game changer, bringing Tetra from a biotech to a revenue company, hence a biopharma. So far, everything has been as we predicted. So we've passed our screening review, entered the scientific review, have completed the brand name review, Scientific review has been ongoing. We even passed our pre-approval GMP inspection. And we believe this is a low-risk type of approval because this drug was withdrawn more than 15 years ago. And the Canadian regulatory scene, basically, if a drug's been off the market, say, for more than 10 years and withdrawn by the manufacturer, not for safety reasons, then it resets the clock and it becomes a new drug. So it's not a generic drug here in Canada. Because it's already been approved, we view this as a low risk, and obviously the manufacturer has its manufacturing approved. Then we obviously, once this is approved, this triggers our REDUVO adversa for obviously a global play in bringing this to the market. So rapidly about our ARDS 003 and our PP003, obviously we believe these are two very key drugs. They're both an immunomodulator as well as an antiviral and antifibrotic drug. The antifibrotic, I think, is really key, protecting the lung, protecting the other organs from multi-organ failure in conditions like sepsis and cytokine release syndromes. We have over 12 years of research in this space, and the antiviral was actually discovered by the National Institute of Health in infected animal studies, where they were able even to show a synergistic effect between our drug and antiviral drugs. This is safe to use even in combination with drugs like dexamethasone because it is not an immunosuppressive drug. So as a company, our value-creating milestones, we've achieved most of them so far this year. We're aiming to complete the last two for Plenitude and Reborn 1, and next year comes the big milestones, which is, like I said, completing the interim analysis of Plenitude, completing, obviously, the study report for Reborn, and the drug approval for REDUVO. And obviously, what follows the drug approval is the commercial launch of the drug and our first revenues as a pharmaceutical company. So those that do not know about Tetra, obviously our market cap has dropped since I made this slide. So we're trading around 17 cents. Our total shares are 401 with 67 million warrants. At the end of August, when we reported to the market our MD&A and financial statements, we had 8.5 million left in our bank account. Thank you very much. Back to the organizer.
Thank you. Guy, does that conclude your remarks today?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. That concludes today's presentation, ladies and gentlemen.
Did you want me to address questions, or still time for that? Or
certainly, you can continue, Guy, if you have more questions. No problem.
Yeah, I just saw a question here. Okay, first question is, where do you see the company 2 to 3 years from now? For me, obviously, when we see the results of the Reborn coming out and my experience, the data we've seen and we reported to the market, obviously we're expecting a positive outcome of our data. So I see Tetra obviously having at least a co-development partner to bring, say, QIXLEEF then to the market. That to me is the minimal expectation that I can see. I also see partnerships for our ARDS 003 coming as well. In my experience in drug development over, I gotta say, a few years, definitely once you get good human clinical data, that brings the partnerships. Next question is, would you say Tetra is a leader in this field? I would say yes, Tetra is a leader in several fields. One, obviously, in delivering cannabinoids by inhalation. We are a leader in this field. We have strong intellectual property. And obviously, we've been developing this since 2016, so a lot of know-how and a lot of data that we've been presenting with the regulators. And same thing on the immunomodulator. We have over 12 years of research, solid intellectual property. So this makes us really a good leader in where we are as a Canadian biotech. Last question is, will you need to partner with a major farm to reach market in the United States? As far as our business model is for Tetra Bio-Pharma, we will not be, say, investing into any sales or marketing staff for our drugs. Our vision is really to license out, enter into partnerships with the major pharmaceutical companies to distribute in Europe and the United States. Even in Canada, our plans to commercialize the REDUVO involve using what we call contract sales organizations and not our own. And that's important because if we ever get partnerships with a big pharma, they may also want Canada and certainly we will want to leave it to them. And if there's no other questions, then yes, I will throw it back to the operator.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes today's presentation, and thank you for tuning in.